shopgear.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
You're listening to the Sabrecast, brought to you by Better Live Than Dead. And now your hosts, Brayton Wilson and Ryan Wolfe.
And with that, we welcome you to the Sabrecast. I didn't pop up the episode. There we go. It's episode 11, season 1. And we have a special guest today. Not Brayton. He is busy out in Rochester doing the Amherst pre-post intermission stuff. We have good Twitter friend of the pod, and I guess I could say coworker over at Side of the Blade. Ben Mathewson is on the podcast today. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to have you finally.
Yes, I appreciate it. I've been looking for. We've been talking about doing this for a while, so I really appreciate. Or glad we were able to make the time to make this happen.
It's one of those things where once you took over at Side of the Blade, because obviously you can follow Ben on Twitter if you already aren't, which I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are, because you do a fantastic job with the tweets, with the GIFs. Not only do you do a good job, but you're also very timely, which is great too, because when I tried to do it back in the day, I was not very good at it.
Well, it's funny. Like I get annoyed because I don't think I get them up quick enough so I'm not located in the Buffalo area. And so I have to watch on NHL TV. So here's I guess I can give you like the
breaking down
how
the
the sausage
wall
is made, basically.
Yeah.
Basically, I have the game on my TV at home on NHL TV watching it. And then I also have NHL TV on my laptop where I'm actually capturing a GIF. So the laptop is running 10 seconds behind what's happening on my TV so that I can watch it in the moment, still be a fan the whole time. Something happens, I can grab it without losing track of the game. But the downside is that NHL TV runs like 45 seconds to a minute behind everyone else as it is. So I'm already seeing it almost a minute later than everyone else is. And then it's going to take me 20 seconds to capture it and then save it. And then Twitter takes like 30 seconds to post. So if I didn't have that initial minute delay, I'd probably be up even quicker.
Goodness.
But
even more efficient. Yeah, I was going to say, you're already doing a good job. We appreciate you. Because I know you. There's a lot of people on Twitter now who you started doing it, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." You know, imitation is the finest form of flattery.
Sure. Well, and it's funny because I obviously Steph, Tom, and like Pete Blackburn were like the big national people that are doing it nationally. Obviously, Steph, or I think it's her name, right? She's running the actual NHL account, which is cool. Mm-hmm. There was a time where I think someone was doing it for the Sabres, but I don't know, it wasn't consistent. And then at the end of last season, I was, I don't know, like everyone else, really frustrated, but I kind of just kept watching the games. And so I was like, I might as well try doing this and see how it works. And I don't know, it seemed to be pretty easy and just kind of ran with it from there.
And if you're not following Ben on Twitter, you can follow him at Ben_, and I'll spell the last name Mathewson. But like I said, you're probably already following him. If not, I'll just say shame on you. Now,
yeah.
It's a Sabres podcast, and we talked a little off the air about this, but it is a Sabres podcast. But since we have you on a Better Live Than Dead podcast here, my cat is trying to get in the cords again. What a surprise. Since we have you here, and I know you're a music guy in your real life, let's chat some music, man.
Yeah, that'd be great.
For those out there, if I can talk here, if those out there who don't know, kind of give us a quick background of what your day job is.
Sure. So my day job is I work for a company called Rope-A-Dope. It's a record label based in the Philadelphia area. I'm personally based in Nashville, but labels in the Philly area. It generally focuses on like jazz, R&B, a little bit of hip hop, but we're also we've gotten into some folk and pop, and might actually be getting into some country now that I'm in Nashville. So basically, my job there is I run the label management side, which is basically once my boss signs an artist, my job is to walk them through the entire process of setting up a release date and then having them get us all the necessary assets in. So masters, artwork, bio, photos, anything needed to make a release happen. And then my job is to confirm that it's all correct, meets all the proper specifications. We get everything in, and then I get it sent to iTunes and Spotify, and we get CDs made. And for some releases, we get vinyl made. And all that. So kind of all the back end work that you don't really see. It's my job to manage the whole process from start to finish until release day every Friday.
But that still sounds like, you know what, it's great because a lot of the jobs like that you can see on the surface, you're like, that's a really sweet job.
Mm-hmm.
But like, to me, your job sounds awesome. And it's one of those jobs where if you didn't explain to some people what it is,
Mm-hmm.
you might not, you're the guy that makes a lot of it happen, you know? So that's,
sure.
I mean, that's really cool.
Right. Well, it's funny because like it's about as close to my dream job as I could have hoped for, especially coming right out of college. Because I was always I guess the reason I got into, I'm from upstate New York area, Binghamton area. And I used to go to like concerts all the time with my dad. We go to Buffalo, New York City, because we didn't have shows in Binghamton. But so I was always going to shows, going to music festivals or whatever. And like, obviously it would have been cool to be in a band, but I remember always looking up on the stage and seeing like the people standing side stage. And I was like, they're always with the band. I was like, I want to be those people. I don't know what they do, but I want to do what they do. And so just kind of through that idea, I did some research and I found out Belmont University in Nashville has a music business program, and that kind of blew my mind that you could study music business. And so that's what, I didn't even visit Belmont. I applied. I didn't even get in initially. I got in after 2 years of community college. Never visited the school, but I knew it's where I wanted to go, and came down to Nashville and have been here since. So yeah, that behind the scenes work, being around the big thing that's happening, but not necessarily being the person front and center, is like my sweet spot. And so yeah, I totally agree. Like it's definitely the kind of work I've wanted to do, and got really fortunate to find a gig that lets me do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, for me too, I always, even when I was younger, you know, people always, I want to grow up to be a baseball player, football player, whatever, play hockey. But excuse me, I've always been the kid that, and even growing up, I'm all about that behind the scenes stuff. I don't really, I don't need the validation like, oh, hey, you know, you're Jack Eichel. You scored a bunch of goals tonight. You know, hey, you're great. I would be like the guy that's behind the scenes, like, yeah, but I'm the reason why, like right. I find interest in like the equipment managers and right. the stuff that you do, or just things that make, like, you're a piece of the machine, but you're a big piece of the machine that if you didn't do your job, someone will notice. But if you do your job, people might be like, how did this happen? And you're like, oh, that was me. Like, that's right. I think that's why I enjoy my, like, working with computers so much, is because while it's still very important what I do, a lot of the work you do is kind of like unsung. So it's really, right. It's just, you know, I don't need to have an ego. People can just be like, thanks. I'm like, you're welcome. That's all I need. I don't care. But sure. I've met some people who are, you know, tell me how great I am. It's like, I haven't got time for you.
Well, it's funny, like, to bring it kind of back to hockey. I've been fortunate here in Nashville to get to know some people in the hockey community, and then through that, some people in the Preds organization. And like, obviously everyone knows like David Poyle and maybe even Brian Poyle. And before he went to Minnesota, Paul Fenton. So like the GM staff up there. But I've gotten to know like a guy that also serves in the management team, but he's like, no, but you'd never see him or anything. But like, he's like that secondary role that's like kind of like right behind those guys. And I'm like, that's the job I want. And like, it's been super interesting to learn that his job exists. And like, I grew up playing hockey like a lot of people, but like, I knew by the time I was maybe 11, like, yeah, I'm not going to make it to the NHL, but, you know, kind of realized that there may be opportunities to work in hockey. And so that's always been like an outside, I don't know, keeping an eye out for possible opportunities there as well. But it's been cool to see that there are jobs like that aren't necessarily the front facing that you can do and still be in that industry.
Maybe that's something I got to look into. You know, it sounds like a lot of fun. I'm still, I'm pushing, I'll be 28 this year. I'm pushing, I'm on a decade in college as of October this year, on and off. So, hey, you know what? Maybe I have a big party or something. I'm not sure, but I don't know, man. It's just, it's crazy out there. Like when you start to talk to people, you start to network, you start to meet people, and you find out what they do. Like I said, it's really neat to kind of peel back the layers of the onion and figure it all out. And, you know, excuse me. Speaking of music, I do want to ask you, because obviously I have you here now, so I can ask you whatever I want to.
Yep.
I want to know the thing about anybody with music. I know with, for instance, TJ Luckman, that's another guy. Yeah. I think if we get, you know, one of these days, and if TJ, I hope TJ is listening, maybe I'll tweet this out after the podcast. I'll say like, we talk about TJ, so then he'll listen to the podcast for sure.
I loved your music episode with him.
Well, I was just about to say, I've got an idea. I've got a dangerous plan, and I appreciate you for saying that and for listening. A dangerous idea. One of these days, we got to get me, you, and TJ to talk music. Even if I'm just like the Charlie Rose or whatever, where I just sit in the middle, ask the questions, and you guys just go, fine by me.
Yeah, I'd love that.
But what I want to ask you is the thing that always interests me is asking people what they're listening to now. Like what's on your, I almost said what's in your CD player, but what am I, 95 years old?
Right.
But what have you been listening to? Like what's for you, like if you were to scroll through your, I don't know, Spotify or
I've got it open right now to double check. Yeah.
Hit me with some things you've been listening to.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the big ones for me, there's like probably 3 or 4 bands or general artists. Biggest one right now that I kind of won't stop listening to is a band called the Band Camino. They're originally from Memphis, but they're based here in Nashville now. And it's funny. I first came across their music on Spotify probably 2 years ago when they had, less than 5,000 plays or whatever on stuff. It caught my attention. And I've kind of been following it ever since. And my biggest regret as far as like my career is concerned is not reaching out to them sooner about trying to bring them into my company. Because since that day, they now have multiple songs with like 13 million plus plays on them and are almost certainly going to sign a major label deal here soon. Anyway, they're like a sort of like a poppy. I don't know. This is something I am really admittedly bad at, is like properly describing music. But I find they're like a band that's sort of similar to what I listened to growing up through the mid 2000s, sort of the pop rock, close to emo, but didn't get quite deep into that sound, which was more my my wheelhouse. And so I don't know, they're like the number one on that list. So the Band Camino is one I highly, highly, highly recommend. The 1975, of course. I mean, I think most people know the 1975 at this point. There's not much to sell. They're an interesting band because you either like them or you don't. And like, if someone says I can't stand the 1975, I totally understand, because they're just, I don't know, there's something a little bit different about them that can really rub someone the wrong way. But I don't know, I really love that band. I'm finally going to see them here in Nashville. I think in May. They're playing the amphitheater here. So I'm really excited about that. Another one is this duo called Joan, Joan. They're a very poppy band. It's just a group of 2 guys. But the 2 most important things to me, and this isn't like, I don't know, that interesting or new, but melody, and specifically for me, the thing that often catches my attention the most is a pre-chorus, and these guys just kill it on the pre-chorus like every time. Like, you hit me with a good pre-chorus, I'm going to be hooked every single time. So yeah, those are 3 of the big ones. There's probably a ton more. I really love the Charlie Puth record from last year. That was on a rotation for me constantly all of 2018. And of course, Casey Musgraves, who rightfully won Album of the Year at the Grammys. That, from the moment I heard that record a year ago, I was like, yeah, this should definitely be up for at least Country Album of the Year, if not Album of the Year generally. And thankfully it won.
Yeah, I was going to say, I warmed up to that real quick. It was one thing where I've admittedly neglected country music,
sure,
more or less, because I have a lot of trouble, and I'm sure you can understand this, is that it really bums me out when a good country singer kind of goes pop. And I know that's where the direction that country music is going in. You've got like I look at like Luke Bryan is what's wrong with country music. Right. But then you look at someone like Casey Musgraves and you say, that's what's right with country music.
Right.
That's like, I'm a big Chris Stapleton fan, just because of the hard rock, old school country, blues and fusion. Everything just feels so good when you listen to it. And that's kind of how I felt when I heard Casey Musgraves' record. And admittedly, like I said, I didn't listen to it until after she won the Grammy, which I kind of kicked myself for. But it's one thing that I've gotten, I've warmed up to a little. Like, they say marriage changes you. I've listened to my wife more when it comes to country music. She says, look, trust me, I know you'll like this. Give it a shot. And look, I'm a huge fan.
Well, it's funny, like before before moving to Nashville, I would not listen to country, all of it, no matter what, even like the good stuff, so to speak, or whatever, the old time country, the nice, everything. I hated country music with a passion. It's just, I don't know why. It was my, I don't know it all teenager thing, I guess. But, and I'm from upstate New York, and I think I was also annoyed because like a lot of people around me were listening to country music, and I don't know, it felt phony to me, I guess, because I grew up in the suburbs, and I don't know, what do you know about riding on or in the back of a pickup truck? Or you know what I mean? Again, the same thing considered about hip hop. I've sort of evolved in that understanding of music is fun, and I'm totally fine with it now. But at the time, that was my thing. So coming to Nashville was a little bit weird to come to the heart of this genre that I couldn't stand for so long. And it took some time to grow on me, and there's still a lot of it that I don't love. Like, it was super interesting. So I went to Belmont University, and when I got there, this would have been end of 2012, Florida Georgia Line had just started to really hit, and Cruise had been massive all summer. And like, it was a fascinating thing to look around campus because Florida Georgia Line, the two guys from Florida Georgia Line are Belmont alum, and they graduated like a year before I got there. And so like, and obviously Belmont's a huge music business and just a general music school. And so like, it's awesome to see, fellow Belmont students hitting it big, like doing big things on a commercial level, worldwide, the whole thing. While at the same time being like, I don't care for what they're actually doing at all. And so like, there's this weird tension's too strong of a word, but like tension's probably the best word on campus about like being really excited about fellow Belmont students doing something good and not caring to actually listen to anything they're doing.
They're definitely one of those where you hear the beat, the beat's all the same. Yeah. The choruses are the same. The song structure's the same. Yep. And you're just like, man, I can't do this.
Yep.
And it's like, there are some really good, like I know, another one out there that I've warmed up to that I kind of felt she was very, I'm going to toe the line and do what I have to do to get to where I want to get was Maren Morris. Another one where
that's interesting.
She's kind of, I feel like for me, she's kind of developed into something bigger.
Sure.
Which obviously the last year has been kind of big for her, but I was just for some reason with her, I always just felt like there was something very insincere. And when it comes, I feel like with country music, if there's an insincerity, I just can't take you.
That's fascinating. That's exactly that point is exactly right. That's super interesting about Maren Morris. That's cool to hear. That's just like not a common thing I've heard. So I'm always interested in hearing a different perspective, especially outside. I just want to make sure
it makes me nervous because I feel like that then my takes are wrong.
No. Well, I mean, I guess the first thing is music, especially. I don't know if you can really have a wrong take.
Yeah.
Other than maybe saying like "Return of the Mac" is a bad song, like I don't know, like that's kind of
that's expulsion. You're
you know what I mean,
but like, allowed on the earth again.
Right, exactly. So I'll say that, and I also have to be careful because it's funny because I work more in jazz music despite being in Nashville. I did used to work in country music a little bit. It was kind of like in the middle of the whole thing, and so you can get into a bit of a bubble and like. You kind of feel how the winds are like, this is the thing that's actually good. And these are the things that are actually bad. And like the things that are actually good are Chris Stapleton, Brothers Osborne, Maren Morris. And I generally agree with all that, especially, I mean, full disclosure, like I'm friends with someone that works for Maren Morris. And so like, I'm really thankful that I love her music at the same time. So I can be sincere about saying that I love the record she just put out. I think Girl is incredible top to bottom. That's another one where like, barring whatever comes out the rest of the year, I think that should probably be up for album of the year next year already, as far as what's already released. No, I'm actually really interested to hear you say that. I like sort of getting pushback on some of the stuff that's kind of unanimously said to be something without much thought. So
it's nice too because like you listen, like if you go back, because like I said, the more I've gotten to become a fan of certain acts, you kind of go back, you listen, you can see the development, so like listening to like I heard Casey Musgrave's record and was like, man, this is really damn good. And then you kind of go back and you're expecting to be disappointed, but it's almost like from the start until now, you can almost see the talent, you can see the natural progression. So that's another one that really gets me. Is again another group that my wife introduced me to, Dan and Shay. They're also incredible. I saw them live handful of months ago, not too long ago, out at Turning Stone in Verona, and they were oh boy, they just destroyed it.
I love them. Their first record was super interesting because like it was I don't know, they weren't holding back on like what they were. Like, we are basically a pop band with some country references, and Shay, the primary singer, sounds a lot like the dude from Rascal Flatts. Like, that's what they were. They kind of embraced it, and I think they were smart to do that. They didn't try to be something they weren't.
Yep.
And I think it's really paid off for them. Again, I mean, I guess I should be upfront. I previously worked for them and Casey Musgraves at a really low level while I was in school doing stuff, but I got really lucky with the company I was with at the time that I was able to work with artists like that I genuinely enjoyed their music beyond just working for them.
I must say too, I do love how professional you are when you talk about this, that you're like, I love these people so much. The greatest thing I've ever heard. But also, side note, I'm biased. It's it's interesting. Like, it's even on Twitter, like stuff. I'm always trying to be really careful because I want to be honest about potential biases that I may have. Yep.
Which, as I've mentioned, I also really, and it's something I catch myself doing, and I've been really trying to be careful about doing. I hate name dropping. I don't want to do it ever. But there's also times, especially like in this moment, where like I feel like I want to be honest about that.
Yeah, no, that's very
sincere. Some context with it too, but like it's a really delicate balance in this industry. I'm sure it's the same for people that work in sports and work in hockey. Like,
look, when I talk to my coworkers, right? And I'm sorry to jump in there.
Oh, you're good.
When I like my coworker knows that I write for Die by the Blade, so he was telling me a couple days ago. He's like, oh man, I was home and I was checking Yahoo, and obviously people out there know that if you go to websites like SB Nation, it'll pop up in your Yahoo feed. Mm-hmm. So he goes, I go on Yahoo and I see the Alex Nylander is recalled news by Ryan Wolfe, and he's like, I can't get away from you. And I'm just like, it is what it is, man. Or like when I used to go to games and I would get caught on TV, and my phone would go a little crazy, and people like, oh my god, I just saw you on TV, and I'm like, yeah, cool, thanks. Like, it makes me feel uncomfortable because I don't want to be the guy that's like,
sure,
you know what? I was in the locker room last night. Yeah.
Right.
I saw so-and-so with all their clothes off. Yeah. It was pretty cool. Like, I don't want to be that guy. Who wants to do that? It's weird.
Right. It's funny. Like, speaking of that, like when I think when I wrote the Rasmus Dahlin thing early in the year on Die by the Blade, that a couple of friends of mine had like some I hadn't seen since like high school or like maybe like my first year of college or whatever. Took a screen grab, texted me. He's like, "Is this you? Did you write this thing?" Because it showed up in like their Google News thing or whatever. So that was pretty like a surreal moment. So I totally get that. But yeah, so
like, whatever. And
right. Yeah. So it's interesting trying to be careful about, especially in music, because there's like a certain air of like celebrity with it too, and like you don't want to come off as you're trying to attach yourself. And I also want to be extremely careful about overinflating my role in the times I helped with them. Like, I had started as an intern. I did a little bit of work post college with some of it. It wasn't even a year. Like, it was very, very brief. But that was an incredible experience. I mean, I guess so the company I was with there, it's a company called Sandbox. It's a artist management company. And so they manage some of the biggest country artists. But when I was there, it was Casey Musgraves, Dan and Shay, Little Big Town, and Shania Twain was still there. I never did any work with her. She was in Vegas. And Faith Hill had just signed. I never did any work with her either. The main one I was helped with was Little Big Town. And that was right when their Painkiller record was coming out, which is the record with Girl Crush and I think Day Drinking on it. And so that was like a really surreal experience to be sort of like in it with someone at that level, putting out a record that was pretty significant in that genre at the time. So yeah, and like when, if you ever hear about like the people in Little Big Town, it's often said like they're some of the nicest people, and like, I don't know, I can actually attest to that. I had interned for them, and then I didn't do anything with them for about 6 months, and then I got asked to help them out for a week at CMA Fest, and I'd shown up, and they hadn't seen me in forever, and like they saw me, and they immediately all came like walking over to me and gave me a big hug and remembered my name and everything, which is like seems like such a little thing, but
that's a big deal.
I don't know that they just remembered some random intern dude at the management company that they saw 4 times. I don't know. That was cool to me, especially as what would I have been, 21, 22 at the time.
Yeah, that's one of those things too, that when you realize like people being that sincere, I know.
Yeah.
Like when I remember I ran into Brian Duff at like a concert in Rochester. Yeah. And it was actually with TJ. And he's like, and the next time I saw Brian, he's like, "Hey Ryan, what's up?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry." Awesome. You know, it's like that's what it is. Like you forget. That's the one thing. Anybody out there who's not involved in, and I know a lot of our friends, your friends in music and hockey, my friends in hockey, we understand it, but like people, just the average fan, I don't think they really can comprehend that like musicians are people just like us. Hockey players are people just like us. Yeah. If you walk up to someone, like if you go in this locker room after the game and you walk up to a guy and say, "Hey man, you want to chat real quick," and you just are like this, just a human being to another human being, I can't tell you how much credibility that you give yourself, because 9 times out of 10, someone walks up and goes, "Oh my God, you're so-and-so." And then like, "Yep, that's me. Thanks. Great." Right. But then that 10th time when you're like, "Hey man, how you doing?" Like seriously, how you doing? You know, and you try to talk about, in my favorite thing is to always try to talk to those people about something that's not sport. Like I said, with Brian Duff, like I loved just like chatting about music, or just finding something else that's like, "Yeah, I know you talk about hockey. It's your job. Let's not do that. Let's talk about something else." And they're like, "Cool, great. This is awesome. This is fun."
Well, it's so funny because like it's sort of the reverse for me here, because obviously most of the people I've met here have been music related, and then like the Preds like took over the city. Like they are the most. The Titans exist, but the Preds are the most important team in the city, and it's incredible to see it. It was always like a decent hockey town, but obviously the Cup run kind of took it to another level, and so it was great because everyone knew I was already a hockey guy, and so like it just added, I don't know, a new conversation piece outside of music or whatever else was happening in Nashville, and like I was sort of seen as, I don't know, authority is too strong of a word, but like someone like wanted to come over and talk to me about hockey and whatever. So I don't know, that was really interesting to me. That's kind of the reversed in Buffalo and Nashville, at least in our experience.
It's fantastic. I mean, like I said, it's people forget, just remember, and that'll be your key. Right. Now, the one thing I do want to mention today, 3/29, March 29th. I forgot what month it was. That's good. Friday, March 29th. 2 records came out today. The Maine came out with a new album, or a new record. I always try to be fancier. I'm trying to say record instead of album because I'm such a hipster.
I always try to change it up so as to avoid using the same word over time, but I always get annoyed with that too. Really,
I feel like album is like I'm not going to buy a CD. I want to, like, it's a record. They recorded it. It's a record.
I definitely don't say CD anymore. That's been long gone.
Someone said CD a couple days ago, and I was like, "I'm sorry. What are you talking about?"
Weird. Although I will say, believe it or not, CDs are still a profit area at least for us.
That's incredible.
It's not like monster money, but we make money on basically every release, at least as far as CDs are concerned, which is pretty interesting.
It's wild that in our lifetime we've seen the creation and the pretty much path of compact discs. But the Maine, that was good, and then Billie Eilish.
I haven't listened to that yet. I hear it's really good. I keep meaning to. I meant to do that today, and I forgot. I've kind of been stuck on the Maren Morris release, to be honest, from 2 weeks ago, and then our release from Christian Scott last week have been like.
I was going to say, don't worry about me, because musically, I am one of the worst people in the world. I have when I go to shows, I'll make a playlist of the songs that were at the show and kind of just play it. It's fun. I like that. It gives me the opportunity to have like a compilation, because normally when I listen to something, it's a full record front to back. I don't mess around with any of that. So if I have a compilation, it's nice. So I listen to Panic at the Disco. Oh yeah. At least once a week, just because it's easy and I like it.
Oh, of course.
But like, I'm going through here right now. Like I found a playlist on Spotify called New Blue, which is like new blues. It's delicious. It was great to write to. I know I found a band called the Honest Heart Collective this week. They were really good. And
related to Spotify, like, I know the robots are taking over or whatever, but like their algorithm playlists, Discover Weekly and Release Radar to a lesser extent, are great. Like the Discover Weekly one, especially, I have to listen every Monday. That's how I find most of my new music now, is through that playlist, because like I'm already sort of drowning in music at work, obviously, and then obviously trying to keep up with just my own personal music listening outside of that is just like kind of a lot to try to stay up on. And so that playlist just really helps just while I'm working, and if something catches my attention, it's what I listen to for the next 6 weeks.
Last two music things, then we can jump over to hockey.
Yeah.
Because I know there are some people probably listening going, I don't care about music. I want to talk about the Sabres. So for those people, we apologize.
Why?
But I don't apologize. You're grounded if that's what you think.
Yeah.
I have been back on the bandwagon of Lawrence. I really cannot wait for them to come to Buffalo or Rochester, because they are incredibly talented. So much fun to listen to. Okay,
tell me about this. Lawrence, I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I'm familiar.
They are.
Lawrence, is it the guy and girl?
Yes. Okay. And their newest album was very good, but I think it was their second to last album that was incredible, which got me hooked. But it's just yes, Breakfast was fantastic. Their ability to play instruments is above a lot of people, and then their talent when it comes to singing is, I just listen to it and I go, how do two people sound this incredible, and how can they do so much stuff with their voices? So it's in the lyrical content's good, the beats too. I'm a big fan of
rhythm.
You said pre-choruses, I'm rhythm. You can get me. If you get a good beat in a song, you could be talking about scooping up cat crap. And I'm like, but the beat's good though.
Right. Well, it's funny. I mean, I'm sort of similar with that too. I played drums growing up. I wasn't much of a musician, but I did play drums. And so rhythm has always been a thing with me. And over the last couple of years, I don't know why it took me so long, but I started to really appreciate and find a lot of joy in good bass playing in a song, like the way a bass line can carry, how it makes a song. To be honest, in most songs, in my opinion, it's one of the reasons I love like the 1975. I think they do a really good job, and it's not always crazy or complex, but I don't know, really important and kind of forming the foundation of a good song. So yeah, rhythm is a big one for me too.
It's great too. As the podcast goes on, we learn more about each other. And guess what? I also am a drummer. I have a drum set in my basement. I think it drives my wife crazy. But hey, I've been playing since I was 12. I don't consider myself all that great, but you know what? Who cares? You have a good time, and you run with it, man.
I started playing probably around the time I was 12 or 13. I only ever had an electric kit growing up, but I played in the.
I want one so bad.
So yeah, I'm literally on Musician's Friend every week, ready to pull the trigger on an electric kit.
There's
a sale right now.
I know. I feel bad because, like I said, you know what? We might actually be able to turn this. I may be able to go back and just turn this from like a Sabrecast into a Better Live Than Dead podcast. I may have to do that because this is what happens. Look at what I'm rude. I'm rude. I wait too long to podcast, and then now this happens. Now it's funny because there was for the longest time, and I removed it, and I'm not sure why, but I have a tab on my Google Chrome that says stuff to buy, and there was one thing in it, and it was an electric drum set. And every so often I'll ask my wife, I'm like, hey, do we have $2,500 laying around?
Right.
She's like, no, why? Because I found it right here. It's a Roland TD 25 KV V-Tour drum kit. Oh my goodness.
You're really going for it. Going for Roland. Well, so like I played all growing up. I played in the high school band, like the actual whatever I don't even know what you would call it, but like we did the 2 concerts a year, whatever, at school. And that was great. And then the moment I graduated, I guess I was still home at community college, but like I was playing hockey at the time. And so I didn't have time to do anything else. And then I moved to Nashville, and like I couldn't bring a clunky electric kit with me to a dorm room and all that. And so I really haven't played drums since 2010.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Sam Rusty would be an understatement. But eventually, when I have a little bit of space to fit, I'm looking around my room right now trying to make space in my mind. But once I have space to fit an electric kit again, I'm probably going to pick one up because I need to.
Let me be the reason.
Yes.
Let me be the reason. But don't send me the bill, though, please.
Yeah.
So when it comes to what was that?
I'll send it to Brayton.
Yeah, please do. Please do. All things go to Brayton, and then if he can't handle it, we'll send it to John, head of Gear Network. I'm sure we can expense it out. I don't think that's how this works here, but we'll try it. Everything's worth a shot once. Yeah, exactly. So for me, when it comes to the Sabres, the one thing I like to do, because obviously I know where I stand, I know where Brayton stands. When I get new people on the podcast, I always kind of want to pick your brain and figure out what it is, what makes you tick as a Sabres fan. Like why do you keep coming back despite the fact that they've won, I don't know, 13 games in the last 13 years? It feels like.
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I think for a lot of people around our age, I started watching this. Okay, so I guess a quick backstory. First, and I didn't grow up in Buffalo, mind you, so I didn't have everyone around me is also a Sabres fan thing. Like my dad and myself are the only Sabres fans I know locally. First ever NHL game I went to was I think it was game 3 of the Ottawa series in '99, first round. My dad had a friend in Buffalo that got tickets because we couldn't afford to buy tickets or anything, and we went with them. So it's the first hockey game I ever went to. So I kind of remember the '99 run a little bit. Not really. I remember Brett Hull, obviously, but any other detail you ask me about that playoff run, I couldn't tell you. And then the next couple of years, like I'm 8 years old, 7, 8 years old at the time, and so I only barely remember the pre-lockout years. It's really lockout year till now that I've obviously like everything, all the details, I have all that. And so obviously the Eastern Conference final runs, you really fall in love with the team. It's when I start to kind of fall in love with Buffalo in general and get a feel for the community, even though I don't live there. And then I got to high school, and which is like 07 to 2010. And I started playing high school hockey myself, and that was a crazy schedule. And so I wasn't watching as much Sabres at that time. And so I kept up with them, but I wasn't super into it. And then I got to college, and I was lucky enough to make my college team. And so I played 2 years of college, and that was, practice every single day and then road trips most weekends, the whole thing. And so again, there was no way to keep up with the Sabres for 2 years. But then in 2012, when I moved to Nashville, new city, didn't know anybody. And of course it was the lockout year. So for the first half of the year, I couldn't watch anything, but I was listening to like hockey podcasts like Merrick versus Wyshynski and during the lockout. And so that kind of reconnected me in a way to the NHL. And then the lockout ended. And so basically, because I was in a new place, it was a way for me to kind of continue to connect with back home and keep up with that. And through like Merrick versus Wyshynski and those podcasts, I got on Twitter. And so through Twitter, I got connected to Buffalo Twitter and specifically Sabres Twitter, and just kind of was lurking around that. And so to be honest, one of the reasons I've kind of stuck with it is Twitter, because the conversations I've, been able to quote unquote curate, I guess, a group of people I find interesting, has made it, interesting to at least keep up with the team. And then now, obviously doing the gift stuff, providing whatever, I guess, service you want to say it is. Like, I don't know. I enjoy, I do genuine, there are nights where I think you can probably tell I've kind of stopped watching.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I do really enjoy doing it. And so that has kept me coming through. I've probably done, what are we at? 76 games. I've probably done 68 to 70 of them at this point.
It was almost so nice, but I know.
Yeah, if you average it out. But so that's, that's probably the big one. It's just sort of a way to connect to a specific community. And I don't know what else. It's interesting to me that non-sports people are on Twitter. I'm super curious about what the draw is to Twitter for not sports, because that's the only thing that's interesting to me for keeping up with it, because there's a specific event on like a regular schedule that everyone kind of congregates around.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps it interesting for me, especially the Sabres.
I think there's like Trump Twitter, anti-Trump Twitter,
sure,
sports Twitter. Music Twitter maybe a little, but music Twitter becomes like Stan Twitter real quick, where everyone's like,
right,
we all love this guy or girl so much. And it's like, bro, I can't do that. I cannot do it. Like, I cannot go on Twitter and try to have I'll have a conversation with someone about how, like, I think Phil Housley is, whatever. But if you're like, hey, go read the comments on Justin Bieber's latest Twitter post, oh my goodness gracious. Swear to God, it's like the downfall of society. Because people are like,
it's the
Justin Bieber, will you lick my feet? And it's like, huh? What?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, especially like I've tried to like follow music people and entertainment people in general, just in regards to my work, to try to stay up with whatever. And like, it's sometimes interesting, but it's not really. And I think it's because there's no. The only time I'm really interested in what they have to say is like during the Grammys or something, because there's a specific event that we're all participating in. It's the reason that going to concerts is great. You can listen to the music at home, but like the concert itself is the moment, and like hopefully you're experiencing it with a friend or whatever, and like it's a great thing. So anyway, that's like a tangent. It's a lot of Twitter is one of the reasons, and like I don't know, I've always loved hockey, and now that I'm not playing competitively anymore, I don't know, I find myself more interested, in like the back end details, the deals and the free agency and even the business stuff, tickets and marketing that they do or whatever. Like I find it all kind of interesting to stay up on. I don't know. That's probably the thing.
I think at the end of the day, it's just that we're so jaded, that like when good things happen, when the 10-game win streak was happening, everyone was like, this shouldn't be happening to us. Why is this happening? And then when they started to lose, everyone was like, we deserve this. This is exactly
I've tried
what
to
we get.
be. I've definitely failed at it at times. I've really tried to be careful about not being too much of a cynic or anything like that, because it's not that there's not a certain place for it. It's just, I don't know, I can't do it. I'm not good at it, and it's gonna, I don't know, I don't like the way I feel about myself when I do that. And so
I think one of the best is SBA. I think he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel bad because he moved back to Buffalo, and I still haven't met him, and that's totally my fault. But he's one of there are so many. I can sit here for hours and just tell you about how awesome Buffalo Twitter people are, because I've met so many great people through Buffalo Twitter. I've told the stories. I've made so many good friends. I would consider you one of my very good Twitter friends here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those things where like people ask me, well, how do you meet all these people? I literally we share memes, and we mutually hate the same things. So it's a real good start.
Well, it's funny. I've only met one person, and now they're a retired Sabres Twitter person. It's Eric from Third Man In, because he's here in Nashville now. And it's funny, during the tank years, I was working at an ice rink here, and I was usually working like Tuesdays and Thursday nights, which is the night that most games are. And so I wasn't able to really watch games other than occasionally looking at my phone. But the thing that allowed me to keep up with the tank more or less was, number one, was just like listening to GR or whatever during the day, but also my Twitter feed, and specifically Eric, for some reason, when he was covering the games, he was one of the best at, I don't know, saying what was happening, but I don't know, he was more interesting about it than just saying some dude hit it off the post. So it was a really good way to run down. But, then fast forward, he ended up leaving, and I was like really just leaving Twitter and the blog and stuff. And I was disappointed because like that was my conduit sort of. And then come to find out he was moving to Nashville to work for the Preds, and have gotten to know him here, which has been really cool. So yeah, that's my one experience. I think I met Chris Ostrander extremely briefly at World Junior last year when I was there. I happened to be with Eric at the time, and I guess we ran into him, but it was like 2 minutes. But yeah, everything I've heard about meeting people from like Sabres Twitter and stuff seems to be great. So I'm hoping next time I'm in the Buffalo area, I'm going to try to meet up with a bunch of you guys, and
we'll have to get a party together. Or even better, I could come down to Nashville, because I really want to come to Nashville.
And there's a direct flight now, starting in September from Buffalo to Nashville.
I think the actual, I have to say, I only remember the start date because it's my birthday. They said October 5th. And I said, I said to my wife, I said, that's the best birthday present ever. Let's go to Nashville.
Yep.
But I'm sure, yeah, I look forward to it, because It looks beautiful. She's been there. She tells me it's fantastic. And the last time she told me a city was incredible and fantastic, it was Las Vegas. And that was incredible. So,
well, and especially October. Here in October, it'll be beautiful. I mean, you don't want to come here over the summer. It's too hot. But yeah, you would love Nashville. I don't know. It's the perfect city for me. It's obviously music, what I came here for, but there's a legit hockey community here. Like we have a new rink that's opening in September. And the Preds are big, and everyone here, every bar you walk into now always has a hockey game, regardless of if it's the Preds or not. It's pretty much the perfect city for me. And I always, although to be honest, I kind of don't recommend people move here anymore because there's too many people here. We don't have the infrastructure for it. But I guess I'll tell my friends they should move here.
Just tell your friends, everyone else, stay away, please.
Exactly. 100 people a day, apparently.
So I think this has been a good chat. I've got an idea. We can end the podcast here, and then we can just come back and do another one soon because this was great.
Yeah, anytime. I'd love to.
Because, there's 5 games left in the season. The season has been, I guess, for even the 10-game win streak, it was watching with bated breath. When's it going to fall apart? It's going to fall apart. They're not this good. We know they're not this good. Even the team said, we know we're not this good. And clearly they were not that good.
Which I'll say, I actually kind of appreciate that Bottrell recognizes that 10-game win streak. I'm thankful to know the GM knows that.
It's not like back in the day when they were like, well, yeah, we had those 10 games though. And it's like, it's like, remember back in the day when they would get blown out by the worst team, but then they would like beat Tampa 2-1 because the goaltender played literally the game of his life. And they're like, but remember that one time we beat Tampa Bay? It's like, you're not going to pull that on me. Right.
So like it is a positive sign to me that he recognizes what his team is. However, to not have made, a Montour-like move or call up, I don't know if he was ready, but not call up Olofsson or not call up Pilot or whatever after the 10-game win streak and after they had started to lose for like 2 weeks at the beginning of December and not recognize, what, we're not as good as a 10-game win streak. At best, we'll probably be a wild card team, but we have such a head start now where it would take such minimal effort to get us that 7th or 8th place spot and get us in the first round. And sure, we'll lose in 5 to Tampa, whatever. We'll get 2 playoff games for the first time in 8 years, and we won't hurt our development because we weren't expecting. I don't think they were expecting to be a bottom 5 team again, even though they knew they weren't a top team, and yet they did nothing, and here we are at the bottom of the standings again. And I don't know, that sort of inaction is really inexcusable to me. I don't see the value in it. Despite
for me, looking on the surface after the 10-game win streak, they had to literally go 500 the rest of the season,
right?
And they would have had 95 plus points.
That's not hard. That shouldn't be hard, especially with the loser.
No, but clearly, the Montour trade, as we've seen, is good. Trying to climb out the window. I don't understand why. The Montour trade was great. I think, and this is obviously something we can talk about as the offseason rolls around. I think I tossed my cat off the desk here. She's getting a little froggy here. 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay, she's off the desk now. Sammy loves to make her podcast appearances here. I don't understand why. She can't speak English, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But cats do whatever they want. But I think the Montour trade was good. I agree. Maybe they should have called Olofsson up a little. Like last night, it blows my mind how much self-awareness Phil Housley doesn't have when he said, wow, these young players really gave us a spark last night. It's like, cool. You needed that spark 4 months ago, Phil.
Sure.
Where was it then? Okay. I mean, granted, I understand that Olofsson looked really good at the start of the season and then had a big old gap where he was ice cold. And then it's like, I always tell people, my thing about baseball is if you see a pitcher or a batter who's killing it the first couple months of the season, wait till the last couple months of the season and then come back to me because he'll be good. They'll adjust. Then he has to adjust. So Olofsson was good. The league adjusted. They got a book on him. And then he had to adjust, which he did fantastically. So I think that they waited maybe a little long to call him up, but again, it's just, there are a lot of questions to be answered and 5 games left. There's not a whole lot of time to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's only been 1 game, but And it is Detroit, so I don't know, whatever it's worth. But at the very least, Olofsson belongs. Whether or not he's going to be an elite goal scorer, I don't know. But I don't know.
If the shot follows him, if the shot follows him like it has, he should get enough out. And the fact that he's not afraid to shoot the puck, which is it. I mean, if we're just comparing directly to the guy he replaced in the lineup, he's night and day.
Right. And the other thing, too, is one of the points that I've made and a lot of people have made about like Pilot is the idea of him needing additional development is pretty isn't accurate. He's a 23-year-old. He is what he is. Olofsson's the same thing. Olofsson is 23. He's had 4 years of pro experience. You know, it was smart. I think it was the right decision for both of those guys to start the year in Rochester. Of course, you know, it's their first year over in North America. You probably don't want to throw them right to the NHL, but like 2 months in and you recognize, okay, yeah, these guys are good. Olofsson can put the puck in the net at 5-on-5 and the power play, and he's not a disaster defensively. Pilot moves the puck to everyone and we don't get scored on when he's on the ice. I don't know. What else do you need to know? Put him in the NHL, especially after they start to go downhill a little bit in December. We've got these two good players that are 23 years old. They're not going to improve that much in any significant way now. Put them in the NHL. And, you know, if they're disasters, then send them back. They don't have to go through waivers or anything. It was just the sitting on your hands when you have these options that aren't 19 years old. They're 23. You know, the age, from what we know about aging curves, they are what they are.
Exactly. And I like the way you put that. They are essentially, they've got the experience. They're going to be what they're going to be, given time to get used to it and then go. Mm-hmm. I think Pilot will be here next year for sure.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at the left wing, I mean, they're playing Olofsson with Eichel right now, and why not? But say you get Jeff Skinner re-signed, which I hope to, whoever the hockey god is, you know, you make sure you find a way to make that happen, because that is you don't get many free winning lottery tickets, and I still think that trade with Carolina was just that. It was a lottery ticket. You won big, you hit the jackpot, buddy, and you paid $1 for the ticket. But you could be looking at probably, because I would have to think too next year, you've got to diversify your assets a little. Skinner, Eichel, Reinhart, it's beautiful, but we now know that Reinhart can push his own line. So I would put Reinhart second line. You could put Olofsson on the second line with him. They need a second line center. I think that a guy that can be now and then transition to 3C, that you can bring Middlestead up when he's ready. But you could be looking at a left wing setup of Skinner, Olofsson, Sherry, and that looks a lot better than we've seen for a while. Sure. Again, I know it's been a game, but my thought is that in his last season of professional hockey overseas, he scored 27 goals, I think it was. This year he has scored, I think, the same in Rochester, and now he comes up to the NHL, and it's again, I understand it's a game, but he's looked like he belonged in Rochester. He looked like he belonged in Buffalo. And I certainly think that as long as he doesn't have a horrendous camp, which he didn't last year, I don't think he so again,
he was great.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they kept him down so long, but I understand the process, whatever, blah, trust the process, whatever.
Well, I mean,
what you want, but you know, he's
right. I mean, related to that though, I thought it was a mistake. I know he didn't play that great in Rochester, but I thought it was a big mistake sending Nylander down at the start of the year instead of Thompson, because I thought Nylander was really good in preseason and deserved a shot at the start of the year over Thompson. So I thought that was a huge mistake. And then especially to hang on to Thompson all year the way they did, I don't know. I'll never understand.
That's going to go down as like one of those History Channel's History's Mysteries, you know?
Right.
It just doesn't make any, like, what did he have? You know, was it like the old days where Ted Nolan slept with Dom Hastrick's wife? Like, what did Tage Thompson have on Phil Housley, aside from the fact that he was acquired by Jason Botterill?
Well, right.
Like, to be in the lineup.
It was so interesting that Thompson made that comment in his first press conference or conference call after the trade, talking about how he was assured like a real opportunity at the top 6 or whatever, which I guess is fine. But I don't know, what do you owe a kid on his ELC? He literally has no leverage on where you play him between the American Hockey League or the NHL. And if he's not cutting it at the NHL, put him in Rochester. I don't understand how you can argue that, it's better for Pilot's development to, stick in Rochester, but not the same thing for Thompson. If you want the argument to be, we want to over marinate our guys in the AHL, that is fine. I don't always agree with that, but it's something that can be defended, but then do it. And not just for a few guys, but for everyone that qualifies for that distinction that should be in the American Hockey League like that, especially a guy like Thompson that should have been there all year.
And I certainly agree. I certainly agree that I even playing devil's advocate here,
mm-hmm.
I understand that Nylander has struggled on and off in Rochester, but when he's looked good, he's looked good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even playing devil's advocate, because I agree with you out of the gate. Should have been Nylander. He had a better camp than Thompson. He looked better than Thompson, whatever. But out of the gate, you look at it, you think to yourself, okay, if you're not going to give it to him, then at what point do you say, okay, now's the time? Because
mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer, and I've thought this kind of for a while, is that when Nylander needs to turn it on, he can. And I know that's kind of a problem with him, that he's not always on.
Right.
But hey, you know what? If you're going to find out, the best way to find out is in the NHL.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think they kind of handcuffed themselves, because my guess is what they were probably banking on is, we'll send him back. He'll tear it up for 20 games and then we'll call him up at the, quarter of the way through the season. And then he didn't do that. And so they didn't have an excuse, I guess, to call him up like they were hoping for. It would have looked weird to call him up any earlier because his performance didn't suggest he deserved it, despite his performance suggesting he deserved it in preseason. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. Those are a couple weird things. In general, I've been okay with Botterill. I think most of the moves he's made have been fine, except for the O'Reilly trade, which has been litigated over and over again.
I think for every you're going to have a bad trade every so often. I mean, if anything, you got the contract off the books. Yeah, you got the contract off the books, but now you've created not a hole, but a crater, because
right.
I mean, if Middlestat stepped up and scored 45, 50 points this year,
sure.
Okay, fine. It's kind of it's a lateral step kind of in the backwards direction, because O'Reilly has killed it this year. But with that being said, you now have Middlestat, who you can definitely trust on your third line as a center, but any more than that right now is probably pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have to go out and get a guy like Kevin Hayes and spend the money. And I mean, I would think I would be fine with that, because you could also go out and trade for somebody, but really right now, who's available? And I don't think going out and signing Matt Duchene is the answer.
Yeah,
I think that would be a sexy. That would be like when they signed Aroff and Leno in that one off season. Not saying that he's the same caliber player. Duchene's way better, but I'm saying in terms of trying to say we're in it to win it, guys.
Yeah,
we just got Matt Duchene.
Right. I think Duchene would be a massive mistake. Hayes, I don't know. Chad has been convincing me a bit more, but I don't know. I'm still not really sold on it. His history doesn't suggest he is what he's done this year. It seems more like a contract year bump. And I don't know. The last time we did that, we ended up with Kyle Oposo, whose game I liked, and I think would have been fine had he not had the health scare, obviously.
Yeah.
But regardless, even at the time, it was a bad contract because he was only going to be the Kyle Oposo we wanted for 3 years.
Yeah.
Not for 7.
I think for me, with Oposo, I've said this multiple times, and I even said it most recently to my wife too when he scored a goal. I said, Oposo's great for the role he plays. He's getting goals. He's getting some points for a lesser role.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you can't be paying a guy that much money to do what he does.
Right.
Unfortunately. And that's the hard part. If Oposo was getting 3.5, 4, even on the high side, you could probably deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that the big ticket and the length of the ticket, it's rough. It's hard. I mean, that's a lot of the reason too why I think O'Reilly was shipped out, because you look at that, you look at the contract, you say, look at how much time is left here. If he's upset now, he could rot, and if it gets any worse, we're stuck with him.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess the biggest thing with O'Reilly was that he was on a good contract that expired when he was 32, not 34, 35, like Oposo's does. And that's the biggest thing for. I remember people suggesting that, like, well, O'Reilly had a really big contract and it's a lot of term, and like, but it's through his prime years, and it ends like right at the start of his decline or like the middle of his decline. Like, he would probably still be a 50-point guy, 45, 50-point guy on the last year of that deal, which is fine when you're getting 60 plus points every year through the heart of it. And like, there was no, I don't know.
Looking back on it, it was for sure a panic move.
I mean, yeah, like the only excuse for the deal is that they really thought there were issues within the team. And like, I don't know, I'm really hesitant to speculate on locker room stuff because in general, I think it's pretty overblown. I've never been in an NHL locker room, but like I've been on teams. I was pretty competitive teams too. And like, of course there were occasional locker room issues, but like when we had talented players and like not an idiot coach, we were fine regardless of any other like maybe internal issues we may have had. And so when you're dealing at the NHL level, like, I don't know, they're all professionals. They'll figure it out. Like, they know that if they're terrible, like, they're not going to have a job. And so, I don't know. I think the locker room stuff, they must have believed it was something because financially there's not an excuse for it. He was on a $7.5 million for a top 6 center in his prime. I don't know. That's market rate for me and probably a little bit below market rate. Because now if you go out and if you sign Hayes, he's probably going to sign for $6.5-7 million. Is he only $500,000 lesser player than O'Reilly? I don't think so. I think O'Reilly's significantly better than Hayes. And if you go get Duchesne's probably going to command over $8 million a year. And Duchesne isn't as good as O'Reilly, in my opinion, and he's going to cost more on a longer contract, deeper into his decline. Like, that's just a massive mistake overall. I thought O'Reilly was perfect age, perfect contract for what they needed. The only reason I would have thought trading O'Reilly was a good idea was if they thought they could get Tavares. That's the only reason, because then that would have been totally worth it. You ship out O'Reilly's money, you bring in Tavares on an $11 million deal or whatever. That makes total sense. Tavares is significantly better than O'Reilly. That would have been worth it.
I would absolutely agree. I think we've seen that too, but I think there's a lot we can still talk about. Like I said, I know we've. I think this has been good. This has been a good little test run. I think I think we could make something out of this. So I certainly would like to have you back on soon.
Yeah, man. Anytime. I'd love to. I love doing this.
Especially with the off season rolling up. There's going to be a lot of silly season stuff. That's my favorite time of year.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
You're like, oh, so the Sabres could trade for the entire Vegas Golden Knight organization?
Yeah.
That's possible?
Yeah.
But with that being said, I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD. Ben is at Ben_MATHEWSON on Twitter. Right. Make sure you give him a follow. And follow me if you're not following me, which why would you? That's rude. That's rude. Yes. And also follow Ben, because that's also rude if you're not following him now that we nicely asked you to. So you can hear this podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, wherever you hear a podcast, you can hear this podcast. Want to say thank you again for tuning in, and we will catch you sometime very soon. Thank God, hockey is almost over.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.